Today, you can enjoy this famous combo at a special price of only $1.99.
And Bob's Big Boy, we love good food just like you do.
You held it with both hands and it was still too big. 2 patties, 3 layers of bun, that red relish dripping down your wrists, and you did not reach for a napkin because you were 10 years old and you were not letting go of this hamburger for anything. That was the Big Boy. And every double-decker you have eaten since then has been chasing that taste, and none of them have come close. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. The Big Boy was not supposed to exist. It was a joke. A 22-year-old kid stood behind a counter in a 10-stool hamburger stand in Glendale, California in February 1937 when a bass player from a local orchestra walked in and said, "I want something different, something special." Bob Wian, who had owned the place for 6 months, had 10 stools, a grill, and a dream, and nothing else. He picked up a sesame seed bun and cut it not once but twice into 3 pieces. He put a patty on the bottom. He put the middle piece of bun on top. He put a second patty on that. He added lettuce, a slice of American cheese, and a spoonful of red relish he had learned to make at his previous job as a dishwasher at a restaurant down the street. He set it in front of the bass player, laughing because he meant it to look ridiculous. A leaning tower of beef and bread that no human mouth could fit around. The bass player took 1 bite and stopped laughing. He took another bite and looked at Bob. By Friday, every person who walked through the door was asking for the same thing. They pressed the top bun down with their palms, leaned in, and the relish hit first, then the beef, then the cheese, then the soft middle bun soaked through with everything above it. Nobody had ever tasted anything like it because nothing like it had ever existed. Bob Wian had invented the most important hamburger in the history of American food without trying to and without knowing what he had done. He did not even have a name for it yet, and this is where the story turns into something you could not make up if you tried. A 6-year-old boy named Richard Woodruff had been coming into the stand almost every day. He was chubby, he wore overalls that were too big for him, and rolls of fat stuck out where his shirt and pants were supposed to meet. He swept the floors and wiped the counter and carried things that were too heavy for him, and Bob paid him the only way a 10-stool hamburger stand could pay a 6-year-old: free burgers. One day, Bob looked at this kid with relish on both cheeks and a double-decker in his hands and said, "Hey, Big Boy," and that was it. The name went on the hamburger, and the hamburger went on the menu, and the menu went on a sign, and the sign went on a building, and eventually that name went on 1,000 buildings across the entire United States of America because a 6-year-old boy was hungry and a 22-year-old kid was joking around. A Warner Brothers animator named Ben Washam was eating at the counter one afternoon, and he started sketching on a paper placemat. He drew Richard Woodruff. Chubby cheeks, checkered overalls, that double-decker hamburger held above his head like a trophy, bare feet, big grin. That drawing on a paper placemat in a 10-stool hamburger stand became one of the most recognizable, iconic images in American history. They put it on the menus, they put it on the signs, they put it on the matchbooks and the napkins and the coffee cups, and then they made it into a statue. A big fiberglass boy in checkered overalls holding a hamburger above his head, and they put him at the edge of every parking lot in the country. You saw him from the back seat of your father's car, and you knew exactly where you were going, and your heart jumped, because that statue meant the Big Boy, and the Big Boy meant the best night of your week. And in 1956, they started giving away comic books at the restaurants, free, with your meal. The Adventures of Big Boy. The man who wrote them was Stan Lee, the same Stan Lee who would create Spider-Man and the Hulk and the X-Men. Before he built Marvel, he wrote the adventures of a chubby kid with a hamburger for a restaurant in California. Bill Everett, the creator of the Submariner, drew the covers. Sol Brodsky, who became Marvel's production director, produced them. The series ran for 40 years and more than 500 issues, and in 1980, a single issue had a print run of 1,250,000 copies, more than any individual Marvel or DC comic at the time. A free hamburger restaurant giveaway was out distributing Spider-Man, because Bob Wian understood that the person who decided where the family ate was not the mother and not the father. It was the child in the back seat who saw the statue and grabbed the comic book and begged to come back next Friday. And the hamburger was the reason they came back. That taste, that 3-layer bun soaked through with relish, that was the hook. That was what the child remembered. Not the booth, not the parking lot, the hamburger. But nobody talks about why that hamburger tasted the way it did. It was not the beef. It was not the bun. It was not even the fact that there were 2 patties instead of 1. It was the relish. That red relish. If you grew up eating Big Boys on the West Coast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was not ketchup. It was not Thousand Island. It was not anything you could buy in a store. It was a dark reddish sauce with a tang that hit the back of your throat, a sweetness that came second, and something underneath both of those flavors that you could never identify no matter how many times you tasted it. Some people swore it had curry in it. Some said A1 sauce. Some said it was a chow chow made at a central commissary in Glendale and shipped fresh to every restaurant, and nobody outside that commissary knew the recipe. A man who cooked at the original Bob's in the 1950s and the 1960s posted online decades later saying he spent time at the commissary and he knew the recipe and everything everyone else was posting was wrong. Former employees have been arguing about that relish on the internet for 20 years. Entire forum threads with dozens of posts from people in their 60s and 70s fight over whether it had curry powder or chili sauce or sweet pickle relish or all 3. People who have not eaten a Big Boy in 30 years still try to recreate that taste in their kitchen at home because they cannot let it go. Because that relish was not just a condiment. That relish was a Friday night. When your father pulled into the parking lot, the car hop came to the window, the milkshake was in a metal cup with a sidecar tin on the side, and you were 8 years old. That hamburger was the center of your universe, and the relish was the thing that made it taste like nothing else, and you have been looking for it ever since. And here is what nobody at McDonald's wants you to know. In the early 1950s, a man named Jim Delligatti was working in Southern California. He managed a Bob's Big Boy drive-in. He made Big Boys every day. He knew the 3-layer bun. He knew the 2 patties. He knew the relish. He knew the lettuce and the cheese and the way the whole thing had to be stacked so it held together when you picked it up. He learned all of it at Bob's. Then he left California and went back to Western Pennsylvania, and in 1957 he opened a McDonald's franchise in Pittsburgh. He opened another one, and eventually he had a dozen McDonald's restaurants in the Pittsburgh area. His customers were steel mill workers who came in after long shifts. They were hungry, and the regular McDonald's hamburger was not enough. They wanted something bigger. Delligatti knew exactly what they wanted because he had spent years making it at Bob's Big Boy. So in 1967, he went into his kitchen and he built a hamburger, 2 beef patties, 3 layers of sesame seed bun, lettuce, cheese, a special sauce. He set it on the counter, and if you had put it next to a Big Boy, the only difference would have been the wrapper. He called it the Big Mac. McDonald's did not want it at first. The home office said no. It was too expensive at 45 cents. It was too different from the standard menu. Delligatti fought for it. He got a regional manager to support him. McDonald's finally said fine, but you have to use our ingredients. Delligatti ignored them and got his 3-layer bun from a local bakery, because McDonald's did not make a 3-layer bun, because nobody in the history of hamburgers had ever used a 3-layer bun except Bob Wian, who invented it 30 years earlier as a joke. The Big Mac went on sale at Jim Delligatti's Uniontown, Pennsylvania restaurant on April 22, 1967 for 45 cents. Within a year, it was on the menu of every McDonald's in America. By 1969, the Big Mac accounted for 19% of McDonald's total sales, 19% of the entire company, from a single sandwich that was copied from a 10-stool hamburger stand in Glendale, California. Today, McDonald's sells 550 million Big Macs a year in the United States alone. The Big Mac has its own museum in North Huntington, Pennsylvania, with a 14-foot-tall statue of the sandwich. The Economist uses it as a global economic indicator. It even has its own day, August 2nd, International Big Mac Day, the most famous hamburger in the world. And Jim Delligatti knew exactly where it came from. He told the Los Angeles Times in 1993 that this was not like discovering the light bulb. The bulb was already there. All I did was screw it in the socket. Those were his exact words. A McDonald's franchise owner admitting on the record in a major American newspaper that the Big Mac was not his invention, that the bulb had been burning at Bob's Big Boy since 1937, that he had seen it with his own eyes while he was working there, that he had simply taken it and put it in a different building with a different name and a different wrapper, and let the world believe McDonald's had created something new. Delligatti never received a single dollar in royalties from McDonald's. They gave him a plaque. He ate a Big Mac every week until he died in 2016 at the age of 98. He ate the copy of a hamburger he used to make at the original restaurant every week for 50 years, and he never got paid for it, and the man who actually invented it never got paid for it either. Bob Wian, the kid who was voted most unlikely to succeed by his classmates at Glendale High School, the kid whose father went bankrupt during the Depression, the kid who washed dishes in the school cafeteria to pay for lunch, the kid who sold his DeSoto Roadster for $300 and borrowed $50 from his dad, and bought a 10-stool stand between a nursery and a liquor store, and invented the most copied sandwich in the history of food as a joke for a musician on a Tuesday night in February 1937. He never patented the hamburger. He never trademarked the 3-layer bun. He never tried to stop McDonald's or anyone else from copying it, because you cannot patent a sandwich, and nobody in 1937 would have thought to try. By the time the Big Mac existed in 1967, the Big Boy had already been sold to Marriott for $7 million, and Bob Wian was a vice president in a hotel company watching the world eat his invention under a different name. He died in 1992 at the age of 77. He never complained about it. Not once. Not publicly. Not in any interview anyone has ever found. But here is what you need to understand. Every time you have ever eaten a Big Mac, you were eating a Big Boy. Every time you pressed that sandwich down with both hands because it was too tall for your mouth, you were doing the same thing that bass player did in February 1937 when Bob Wian set a joke down in front of him. Every time you tasted that special sauce, you were tasting a version of the red relish that Wian learned to make as a dishwasher at the Right Spot in Glendale in 1930. Every Whopper with an extra patty, every double stack at Wendy's, every diner burger with 2 patties and a middle bun, all of them, every single one. They exist because a 22-year-old kid cut a bun in 3 and meant it as a joke, and a 6-year-old boy in droopy overalls ate it every day, and an animator drew it on a placemat, and a statue held it above his head at the edge of a parking lot where your father pulled in on a Friday night. And here is the thing that hurts. You cannot get one anymore. Not the real one. not in most of America. At the peak, there were more than 1,000 big boy restaurants in this country, and now there are 55, and most of them are in Michigan, and the red relish is gone from almost all of them. Because the commissary in Glendale that made it closed decades ago, and nobody who worked there ever published the recipe. People have been trying to recreate it in their kitchens for 40 years, and they cannot get it right. And they know they cannot get it right. And they keep trying because the taste is in their memory so clearly that they can close their eyes and feel it on their tongue, and they open their eyes and look at the bowl in front of them, and it is close, but it is not the same, and it is never going to be the same. That relish died with the commissary. The exact taste of a big boy on a Friday night in 1974 exists only in the memory of the people who were there. And every year there are fewer of those people and the memory gets quieter. In Burbank, California, on Riverside Drive, there is a building that has been standing since 1949. It is the oldest Bob's Big Boy in America. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. Every Friday night, the parking lot fills with classic cars and the neon sign glows. You can walk in and sit down and order a big boy, and they will bring you a hamburger with 2 patties and 3 layers of bun with lettuce and cheese. The relish is not the same relish from 1974, but it is close enough that when it hits your tongue, something happens in the back of your brain that is not about food. It is about time. It is about a parking lot, a car hop, a metal milkshake cup, a paper placemat with a cartoon of a chubby boy in overalls, your father's car, the smell of the grill, the sound of the radio, and the weight of that hamburger in both hands when you were 10 years old and the world was small and good and tasted like red relish on a Friday night. That hamburger is 88 years old. It is older than the Big Mac by 30 years. It is older than the Whopper by 20 years. It was the first, the original, the one they all copied. And the man who invented it sold his car to make it and named it after a child and watched someone else take credit for it and never said a word. Bob Wian just kept making hamburgers, and if you ever had one, you know why. Because that first bite with the relish on your tongue and the cheese melting into the middle bun and the beef still warm from the grill was not just a hamburger. It was the taste of the night your father said yes, the night nobody said no, the night nobody checked the price. It was the night you sat in a booth or in the back seat of the car with the window down and the car hop walking away and that big boy in your hands, and the whole world tasted exactly the way it was supposed to. If you remember the big boy, I want to hear about it. Tell me which one was yours. Was it Bob's or Frisch's or Shoney's or Elias Brothers or one of the dozen other names they used across the country? Tell me what you remember about that first bite. Tell me if you can still taste the relish when you close your eyes, and if you have spent the last 30 years trying to find that taste again and you still cannot get the relish right, you are not alone. None of us can.